All right, here we go with the next video, same day. This is going to be a walkthrough of my off-grid water. I wanted to show you, the tank is over there. This is hooked to that tank. There's no pumps going right now from the tank. There is a pump going to fill the tank, but this is just the water being pushed out of the tank and filling my cattle water in here. So they're keeping it drank down at this point. I've got 15 cows. So they're drinking enough that this is not overflowing, but it does overflow. So sometimes we shut it off. So they're all sitting in the shade chewing cud. That's what you want to see. At least they've had enough to eat. They've been on short pasture, but I'm getting them all the hay they want. But they're doing all right. If they were really hungry, they wouldn't be laying around in the shade, even when it's hot like this. But they're Highland, Scottish Highland cattle. They like the shade this time of day. All that black on them, they absorb too much heat. They get overheated, so they're just taking it easy in the shade. Not much breeze today. Cows look like they're doing all right, though. Be better to have a little more. Cows are over here making topsoil for me. So I'm up on top of my tank, 3,000 gallon tank. Hold on tight to this camera. Tank's maybe half full, probably not even that. I've been draining it down since I bought it, just in case there's any kind of residue from the manufacturing of this tank. I've run any number of full tanks of water through the system just to rinse this thing out. So that's all the flow we get. The sun's shining right now. The panel is pretty well oriented to the sun. That's my water flow. That much flow. It's about 3 average days to fill this thing. Okay, this little string, I wanted to tell you. See this little float valve? Cheap little thing. Not very much. You can get them for less than $10 if you buy a number of them. And I put the little string on there in case it pops off. I don't want to have to fish it out again. I think I forgot to glue that slip fitting when I put this in, and I think it popped out. I suggest doing all threaded fittings. Don't use any glue, then you won't have to worry about it. And if you have glued fittings, might not be a bad idea to tie a little safety string on there. If it pops off, you don't have to fish that sucker out of there. I fished it out and it was a pain, but I got it. And I also bought a backup, so I have an extra float valve. But when that gets full, that little valve in there it'll shut it off. So it's very simple. I recommend this, at least so far. That's an excellent little valve. Simple to put in, and it does the job. And affordable. So this is the 3,000 gallon tank. We use ropes to pull this thing up. We leveled the ground and compacted it. We tried not to dig any more dirt than we had to, because they recommend you put these on a concrete pad. I know it's because they don't want them falling over and killing you if they're not on perfect grade or whatever. But we're on pretty firm, well-packed Virginia clay here. Up at the top of the ridge, got a lot of gravelly clay. So it's pretty stable dirt. It's not going to get undermined by any water. We're at the top of the ridge, so there's not a lot of erosion to deal with. This is the inlet 1/2-inch pipe, and again, I would recommend doing all threaded fittings. I kind of just use what I had around here. That's why it looks like so many steps down and so forth. You can do it with a lot less fittings. I just use what I had. This is just that 1/2-inch black pipe, little tiny sediment filter. I don't know if that's sweating or leaking, but you can take this off and take the sediment out. This is coming from the well into the tank, and it stayed pretty clean, obviously. Here's a shut-off valve. If I shut this off before, this is a secondary shut-off. The one inside there will shut off when the tank is full, and then this water will divert back this way, and I'll show you that in a little while. I can also divert the water earlier if I need to by just turning this off. The water will go out at a different spot, and I'll show you where that is. So there's a 1/2 inch and a half PVC threaded. Again, do all threaded fittings when you go to buy the stuff. And you have to use flexible pipe. If you use rigid pipe, it's going to crack on you. because everything's shaking. You got movement, and that movement will focus itself right down on that pipe, and you're going to have just snap fittings. Do not use rigid pipe, use flexible pipe, or you're going to have all kinds of trouble. So this system will work if I shut off all my panels, especially after this tank is full. I have 3,000 gallons, and this pressure pump is not working. The water will still flow. Like what I was showing you over there where the cow water was, I can have that much stronger flow than that in the house. Because the house is down grade more. That hydrant is on grade, so it just doesn't have the same pressure as if you were down lower. So coming out of the tank, I have a swirl filter, glass swirl filter, and that will, you want to keep this pressure pump very clean. This is a 24 volt pressure pump. I'm trying not to show you the brand, but oh well. I'm going to show you how I'm hooking this thing up just for now. I got this is a standard MC4 solar connector or whatever you call them, and I just took the connector port off. I'm not a very good cameraman here. All right, here's one end. Here's the other end, and it's not going to show. One end, the other end. Yes, I should win many awards for my cameramanship. All right. Anyway. Alright, officially turned on. For now, that's the way I'm doing this. So, you don't get to see the brand. There's no reason for me to... I have to test this thing for a year or two and see how it holds out. Then I'll give you my recommendation. There's the swirl filter. There's a little valve at the bottom you can take the debris out. Now this will run until the whole system's at 60 psi. Then it'll shut off. And it'll stay shut off until it hits 30 psi. So between 30 and 60 is the range. You can get by without a pressure tank, but it's going to wear your pump out. You really should have a pressure tank. Now I already have a pressure tank because I have an AC system that this is plumbed to. The traditional, it's got all the regular well stuff. So I can pump using that pressure tank with this pump, and it will shut off. So it won't just keep on running. This is not a continuous cycle pump. This is on demand. It's supposed to run 10 minutes or less, depending on the temperature, depending on how many volts you have going to it, how many amps you have going to it, and so forth. It can run up to 8 amps, so it's a pretty decent motor. So this is 1-inch pipe going back to my main system out of this, but I have a couple hydrants hooked to it, and then I have some other buildings hooked to it, but then it goes back into my main house plumbing, and I'll show you that some other time. But anyway, here's the pressure pump, swirl filter, shut-off valve at the bottom of your tank. You're going to need all of that for sure. I buried my lines 3 feet deep, a little bit deeper, as deep as the trencher would let me. I just got down as deep as I could. I scraped all that loose dirt out and got the pipe down deep, deeper than I needed to. And I will do a frequently asked questions video concerning some of the stuff people are asking me. Undo that. So it's only like number 12 wire coming off of that. So I got number 10. Now this is PV rated number 10, which means it's direct bury. It's outside. It can be outside or buried. I'm not sure you can submerge this stuff, but it can be buried. I mean, water submerged. So it's 100 foot, and I'm going to take you over and show you my how I'm powering this pump. So here's some of that 100 foot of number 10 PV rated wire. Comes all the way over here. Now this, I do not have to have this. I have water from that tank for a year, just trickling out of that thing. Cooking and drinking water. I'm not going to be able to wash and do all the other stuff with it, but if we're just drinking it, then it'll last us a long time. So it's an off-grid water solution. All of the water that I use on the property runs to that tank, so that's going to keep it fresh. We keep the water moving. 320 watt, half cell, monocrystalline, pretty decent panel. It's a little bit older style. It would have been top of the line years back. I got a really good price on it, like $135 for this. Had to buy a number of them to get that price, but I walked away pretty happy. That's a good price. And this is this is the whole thing here. It's just an old Harbor Freight dolly, or just a cheap China-made dolly. Unistrut, the thin Unistrut, you can get this at the box stores. Regular old U-bolts. And I did use stainless hardware here. Where at the contact point, I got a stainless washer in between the strut and the aluminum, and then it's all stainless hardware. That's one of the points where you have the most electrical activity. It's going to eat stuff. That should slow down that problem, hopefully. So just 2 of those. I used the holes that they already had with the panel for that. And then I just, right there, I just used a self-tapping metal screw to hold that. That's 3/4 conduit. I just pounded it flat with a hammer. And you just use a regular pipe strap. And again, the self-tapping metal screw. This whole thing, it's snug, but it allows movement. So I can move this. I don't know if I can do this or not, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. Tilt it back, and I can move it, and then it'll slide if it needs to. When those uprights hit, it'll slide here. So it's self-adjusting to the terrain, and it is pretty sturdy. We've already had some pretty good winds. I'm not too worried about this thing getting blown away. Or it'll just get knocked over. If anything, it's not going to blow away. I don't think it's going to get knocked over. I've had cows around it. I haven't had any problems yet. So the battery backup, which I did want for this, because I want to have my 60 pounds of pressure all the time, day and night, rain or snow, sunshine, whatever. I want to have pressure, so I dedicated 2 solar gel batteries to this. Now the great thing about these solar gel batteries is they don't freeze, not here, and it has to be pretty cold for them to freeze. Maybe up in the upper parts of Canada they might freeze. They're good to like 30 below or something like that. Not an issue here. So regular batteries will freeze, and you got to insulate them and all that. These solar gel batteries will not freeze. They're nice and heavy. I screwed a couple of pieces of 1-inch conduit to the bottom plate of that dolly to kind of hold these batteries, if you can see that. They're not. I'm going to get some bungee cords on these. I haven't done that yet. Now for my hardware, I just used regular battery cables. People are going to say blah blah blah. It's lead to lead. This is a lead lug. That's lead. It's all lead. Not a problem, as long as you have good connection. I flipped the plates over on these smaller wires. This is a number 10. It's old well wire. This is water submersible. It's number 10. And I wired in series here. I used a part of an old welding lead, a cheaper, lower quality welding lead. I just cut that off, and I left an S, so you don't have, it's not going to be straining the connectors too much if you move it around. So they're wired in series. That's 2 12-volt batteries, and they're 208 amp hours each. So that's 0.4 kilowatts of battery right there. 416 amp hours. Plus and minus, you know, you wire them in series, and then now you have 24 volts. Well, I had 24 volts at 208 amp hours. Let me correct that. That's 0.2 kilowatts at 24. Anyway, I put everything in this ammo box. I have it like this for later because I am going to put an inverter in there, because I'm going to use this setup as a charging station for a campsite. So you have the inverter in there, and people can come and charge, you know, their phones or their batteries for their tools or just whatever. It's just it'll be a charging station for when I have too much electricity being generated. We'll use it somewhere. Right now, I just have super cheap solar controller in there. 30 amp, 24 volt, not very much money at all, less than $15. And I just drilled holes in the bottom of the thing and hooked up all my wires. So that's pretty straightforward. I need to over explain that, but this is just the general idea of my solar generator. And I could always make a bigger one if I wanted to run 2 panels, if I end up needing it. But right now 1 panel is more than enough. It's going to give me my 8 amps easily for that. Maybe 8.5, I think that pump maxes out at, so I'm just not going to need it. So there's the power supply for the pressure pump. And again, completely optional. Going to have water no matter what, but I would prefer to just use this traditionally basically which means I'm going to shut my AC pump off and run my DC pump. I have both. Now I'm going to walk over and show you this. Well, just to quickly share some of my other projects here. This is my deep freezer. It's about 95% done. I'm going to run it in cooler months. I'm going to use it in cooler months. I got plenty of beef around here. I'll show you that later. But anyway, this is all going to get closed in. I'm going to come off that roof, and then I'm going to have a butchering room, you know, for fish, game, chickens, beef. I'm going to have counters in there and a sink and all that kind of thing. It's just dedicated for that kind of work. And this is hooked to that 3/4 line is hooked to the rest of it. The traditional, my regular plumbing system, it's hooked right there, and then I got a 2-inch drainage. So there's where I'll put the pieces of beef in and slide them into the cooler. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Also, this is going to be a gray water and sewage project for the future. So the gray water is going to run down that way to that low depression, and then over there is the septic. So I have the lines in here. I just got to hook it all to that other stuff. It's a big project. You can kind of see where my digging was done, trenching. We only trench this, not, you know, a month ago or whatever. So anyway, this is where all my water lines are buried, going over to that tank. It's all coming out of the... So here's my deep well casing, 6-inch casing. I used, what's the brand name of this? I put both pumps in there. So I have an AC system that was already in place, and I just dropped this DC pump in there. My AC pump is 92 feet down. My AC pump's 92. My DC pump is like 45. This wire right here, 50 feet long. So it's probably like 40, 46, 47 feet down. Whatever, how much ever wire is wasted. It's a 50-foot piece of wire, and I just adjusted my pipe and all that to the length of the wire. It's not a long run, so it doesn't need a whole lot of amps for that pump. That pump's running probably less than 4 right now. So this is, you have to have or you should really have the pump controller if you're going to have a pump. It's going to help you with low, water. If you don't run out of water, it'll shut off. It's going to optimize the current to your pump and keep it from burning out, overcharging, overrunning, shut off. It gets too low and all that. It just really lengthens the life of your pump. That's an expensive little thing right there for what it is. 240 bucks. You could go PV direct, which these wires would just go right to my solar panel, and I wouldn't go through this box at all. I wanted to see how long the pump lasts, using the best controller I can get and so forth. And then that rope there is just a safety wire to my DC pump. So I left it where I could get to it easy in case I had to pull anything out. So I just used self-tapping screws into this pole. This is an old satellite dish pole that I left laying around, and up to there, and don't look at my too ugly a welding. Hey, it's not much of a welder. I mean the welding machine itself. Anyway, that's a carport pole. I had 4 of them from tearing down an old carport, and I saved that. And I welded it in there, and I was hoping this adjuster part, but it's so seized up I couldn't adjust it, so I'm a little off axis with my solar. I was hoping I could spin it, and it just won't spin. Aggravating. So I used this liquid tight, because on this part I just used the regular TNN wire or whatever, just regular indoor wire. This stuff here, number 10. So I just bought the conduit instead of buying the wire. I already had the wire. I got on clearance, got a great deal on it. So you can see I got basically 2 panels. The 2 on the left are wired together, 2 on the right are wired together, and they come together to give me 24 volts. So each is a 45 watt at whatever it was, 2.4 amps. 12 volt panel wired together to make 24 volt panel at 2.4 amps. And then I put the 2 together to get 24 volts at 4.8 amps. And the pump likes 4.5 amps. So we're so close. These are old panels I already had, kind of junky. They're doing the job though. I was surprised that that's all this pump needs, 180 watts. That's it. Bench strap, I bent them on an anvil. That's what's holding to the old fence post there, or fence rail, and it's an older one, a heavy, thick one. So that's all homemade up there. U-bolts on to the top of where it used to be a carport, and then I put some cable on there just in case it wants to fall down. Most of my wind's going to be coming from this direction, so this wire would pretty much prevent it from falling over. But I put this wire on here so when I lean a ladder up against that, it pushes that way, and it's not going to pull that. It's got a lot of concrete at the bottom of this pole, so I didn't actually put new concrete. It just had an old giant bunch of concrete attached to the pole, so I just left it attached, just put it in there a hole. So, and it's like, it's going on almost 14 feet up there. So it's pretty high. I had to go that high because I have this adjustable array here where I did that myself too. Anyway, you can tilt them up and change your angle. So I go for like 78 degrees in the winter and like 30 degrees in the summer here. And that'll give you like a 5% gain. 2 adjustments a year will give you a 5% gain, which is significant. So, and this is the same panel I showed you earlier. Jinko, Eagle, pretty decent. Anyway, I got this catwalk, old pool steps and a catwalk. Get up there and walk around and work on adjusting those panels and so forth. Also gives me a pretty good vantage point. Anyway, I digress. So that's the power. This is where the solar pump is coming out. I got the pitless adapter in there, and it runs that way. Now this is one thing I wanted to show you. This is a 75 psi pressure relief valve. So what happens when I turn off that 1/2 inch valve I showed you back there on the tank, when I don't need to be filling or whatever. Now this is an ugly mess. It's a little embarrassing, but this is going to be a really pretty creek lined with river rock and so forth. We got some landscaping to do. But right now, this is what will water the chickens and ducks. So as soon as I turn off that valve, the water will fill this whole creek. And this, if you're familiar with permaculture, this is a future food forest. Just the hills and valleys, swales and terraces, whatever you want to call it. This is the top of a ridge here. So this is going to be not necessarily gardens, but more like food trees, and this is the backbone for that. And I guess I'll just fill you in. I'm going to put in, I don't know, hopefully this isn't too much of a tangent, because it's going to tie into the solar. Up here, I'm going to put a little bit higher pond, and the water is going to come in over there by a little bit by the laundry line. Don't look at our laundry. Anyway, the water will fill this, and it'll be spilling over here where there'll be a little waterfall. And anyway, I'm going to have minnows in there for my aquaponics. I will be raising minnows right outside. I just scoop them up, take them in, and feed them right to my fish. I'm going to be doing crappie, and that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, this is very ugly right now, but it's going to be a beautiful thing later. We'll get these pavers in and get this collapsing bank. It's going to be a nice thing. It's a big project, but right now it's just a muddy, ugly mess. The point is that when my tank is full, my pump will fill this all in with water. Later on, it'll be running a waterfall, my extra water, and then we won't have the birds in here later. Right down there, next to that peach tree, will be where the water collects. It gets pumped back. It's going to be circulated by another pump, and then the water is going to run out into the other paddock, and that will be where my chickens are. There won't be any chickens in this mess later. The water will be nice and clean and beautiful. It'll be like living next to a creek, and it will be powered just by the excess of my tank. So the pump will always be doing work for me whenever the sun is shining. And that tank is going to stay, I mean, it's hard to run through 3,000 gallons of water if you're living a regular lifestyle. We'll be making sure to use as much water as we can, and also make sure we have enough water to keep this creek looking pretty. So I think that would be the end of what I needed to show you. I showed you the deep well. And yes, I got 2 pumps. That's an important point. I got 2 pumps in the existing well. 6-inch casing. The pump that I got fit in there. The pitless adapter, we had to put one in and the other because they were getting hung up on the pitless adapters because there's 2 in there. But if I pull them both out and put them one in after the other, that was the hardest part. The rest is pretty simple. I mean, it's not terribly difficult. It's a little bit of a pain. But the point is I used my existing deep well, which is a beautiful thing. If you have questions, let me know. I am going to do a frequently asked questions concerning this whole project, and I have a whole list of questions to answer already. But go ahead and send me a question and I'll answer it as best I can. I'm not an expert. I figured this out for myself. So I'm showing the brand on my pump controller. You didn't see that. I'm not giving anybody free advertising. And anyway, I need to try this stuff out before I recommend it. I can tell you what I bought, but I can't recommend it. It was the right price and it seemed to do the job. The longevity, we need to see what that looks like. At any rate, if you have questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. Maybe not individually, but that's a really good question. If it's the same question I've gotten a number of times, I'm going to just put them all in the video, and I'll be glad to help you to a point. If what I've done is helpful, then I'll help you. And if I haven't filled in all the information, I will. I think everybody should have their own water supply. And I made the decision and spent the money to get my own. I'm already not on a municipal water supply. I'm on my own. I've been taking care of my own well for years. But now I've upped it, trying to if we don't have electricity, we're going to have water. And not truly off-grid, you're dependent on a pump, but you know what? Have a backup pump and have some parts, at least have parts to replace the pump. The pump I got it has replacement parts and so forth. And I plan on, if life got really bad and we had no water, no way to pump water, you can't drink 3,000 gallons of water a year if you're 5 people. You're going to have water. And if I need to do anything else, I have a whole nother thing. I have a pond down there. I can use the water down there and pump it up here. I have 2 shallow wells, and I'm going to be putting a hand pump on one of those. I'll show you how I do that when I get around to it. It's inside my greenhouse. It's kind of cool. Anyway, this is probably going a little long. I appreciate you watching. I would recommend that you please get your own water supply. You can only buy and store so much. You need to be able to get it out of the ground or out of the air with rain or whatever. Get your own water. Don't trust those municipal water supplies. At any rate, have a good day. Thank you.